tal? Yo soy Héctor Guerrero del Laboratorio de Juegos del Centro de Cultura Digital y estamos transmitiendo dentro del festival Stop Motion MX y queremos darle la más cordial bienvenida a nuestro siguiente ponente, que es Anders Gustafsson. Anders Gustafsson ha trabajado en animación y juegos durante los últimos 20 años. Desde dibujos animados para niños, anuncios publicitarios, programas piloto de televisión, hasta juegos de aventuras de point and click hechos a mano. Actualmente está sumergido en la comedia de títeres. Anders, muchísimo gusto de estar contigo. Esta plática va a ser en inglés, entonces nos va a estar apoyando Marilu. Marilu, muchísimas gracias por acompañarnos y pues les dejo las cámaras. Adelante.
Hello, Anders. Welcome.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me. Yeah.
Talk to us about your projects, please.
Yes. So I've made a game called The Dream Machine, and it's a stop motion game. We used all kinds of materials, mostly clay, cardboard, popsicle sticks, and the rundown is it's a hand-built point-and-click adventure game because that is the background we have, and it was made by me and my friend Eric. He is mostly in charge for building stuff, and I did the writing and the game design and some other things. And we released it episodically, and that wasn't our intention in the beginning. But after a while, money ran out, and we had to release what we had and try to find more money gradually. And that was one of the reasons why this game took 8 years to make. The fact that it's hand-built was also a hugely contributing factor. And I have a background in traditional animation. I designed backgrounds for a show like this, and also more traditional children's shows. But after that, I kind of lost my way, and I did commercial work for companies like Nike and Adidas. That was a lot of fun, especially some of the campaigns had game components in them, and I usually try to get in on the game side of the project because that was always so fun. And after I got more and more into games, I realized that selling expensive shoes isn't what I wanted to do. So I resigned, and I started to make small games of my own, mostly to learn how to program because I'm not a programmer. I'm only self-taught, and I can't do it. But it doesn't really come easy for me. So I tried to make simple little adventure games, just to get into it, and I released them online, and some people liked them a lot. So that spurred me on. I sent them into some competitions, and they did okay. So I thought I was on the right track here. And Eric is my dear friend that I got to know during animation school. And after animation school, he got more and more into the stop motion aspect of animation. And he did kids' television shows, but he also worked on special effects for big budget movies. So if you ever wonder who made all the swords and the lances, and especially these kind of effecty things, then Eric is one of those guys. And he's also worked on more regular traditional children's shows, like these ones. And after a while, we started to more and more go into, wouldn't it be fun to do projects together, especially do it in the style we used to have when we were younger. We just go strictly by passion and just do it for the fun of doing it. And we had a lot of conversations at the time. We were both in jobs we didn't really appreciate, and we felt a little trapped and boxed in. So we started calling each other up towards the end of the day and said, wouldn't it be fun to do a project like this, and would it be fun to do a project like that? And at the time, a lot of the games that we saw out there, both of us play a lot of games, but we felt that we were less and less into the type of games that were out there, and I don't really know what this game is, and I'm sorry for shitting on it, but a lot of games looked like that at the time. They were kind of brown and very violent, and it had this kind of
post-apocalyptic and
and we felt that there ought to be more fun things to do within the medium of games aside from that. And both Eric and I are hugely into a lot of these influences: Burroughs, Lynch, Polanski, the Quay brothers, of course, Cronenberg. And we started to talk about the project that melded all those influences together. That's in the abstract, of course, but also our gaming backgrounds are in a lot of these type of games, adventure games, Space Quest, Loom, and Monkey Island, of course, here. And I especially remember the boy being attacked in the bottom right corner. That's from Loom. And I remember that moment. I was playing that when I was pretty young. And that's a part of a puzzle which is really devious. It's you have a dragon chasing you, and in order to get the dragon off your back, you change clothes with another little boy that resembles you. So the dragon goes after him instead, and he kills him.
Nice.
Yeah, and that's the solution to the problem. And when I played that, I felt so horrible. And especially later on in the game, you're confronted by the ghost of this little boy, and he asks you, "Why did you do that? Didn't I have the right?" Yeah, the guilt. He was guilt tripping you. Didn't I have the right to grow up like any other boy? Why would you do that? And that just made me feel worse. And
what a nice game!
That is a great game. That was when I realized that the emotional storytelling power of computer games. And that's what I wanted to veer towards, and not make the power fantasies. And we're talking in very loose terms about what type of game we wanted to make. And since Eric has a stop motion background, he suggested that we do it in stop motion style. But I immediately said no, because stop motion takes forever, and you have to have the temperament of a crazy person in order to try it. But in order to prove me wrong, he set up all night and made these little sets. And then in the morning when I woke up, he had sent me these images that you're seeing right now. And he said that, no, stop motion doesn't have to take a lot of time. You can actually get a lot done if you just, push the gas a little bit. And I immediately fell in love with these environments because they're so cute and intriguing. You want to walk around in them and touch them. And I was especially fond of the fact that he'd worked so fast that you could see fingerprints in the paint, because he didn't have time to let it dry before he moved on. And in some photograph, the color was running. And I just love that, the tangible nature of stop motion, which is very hard to achieve in any other way other than just you gotta build it. But in order to maybe sway some people towards the notion of doing a stop motion computer game, or made them sway against it, it does. These are my pros. It does offer a distinct look. Obviously, nothing looks like stop motion animation, and you don't have to break the bank if you work with cheap materials like cardboard. And we used a lot of found objects. We basically used anything we could find, rocks and twigs, whatever we could find that suited. And I think that one of the biggest perks of doing a stop motion game is that any part of the making process is profoundly fascinating for other people to watch. So you can just do a time lapse. Put a camera behind you when you're working and make a time lapse of that and post it somewhere, and people will be thrilled at seeing that. It's so tranquil and wonderful to see a little stop motion world get built from scratch. So it kind of become the process of making the game becomes your marketing director in a way. And especially in adventure games, which are very static, you take a lot of time playing them. There's no imposed time limit on it. You can solve the puzzle if you're not skilled, you can solve them slowly, or you can do them fast. So any player will stay in an environment for a very long time. So it helps that you get all these fine-grained detail in the backgrounds, so the player has something to watch while they'll be potentially being stumped on a puzzle.
A lot to watch. Yeah.
A lot to watch. You get a lot to watch. There's a lot of eye candy in stop motion. And strangely enough, or maybe not strangely enough, but there's not a lot of stop motion animation games out there. There are a few more now, and I have examples of that, and examples of where I think stop motion is heading right now. But it's still super exclusive, and it's still if you're not super technically inclined, it's still a feasible way to do a game, I think. On the con side, you can't get away from that. It takes a long time. Of course, modeling in 3D takes a long time as well, but I think this is harder. And if you have you have to plan everything out. If the puzzles and the mutations of the puzzles, you have to have that in your head. Unless you have a huge warehouse where you can put all your environments, you have to knock some of the environments down. And if you realize then, oh, we forgot to take an image from this angle, then you're screwed. And sometimes then you have to build it over again, and that's not recommended. And you can get away from the static nature of stop motion environments, but it is very hard. Especially if you want dramatic changes, you basically have to build two sets. There's no other way around it. And some things I just wouldn't recommend you do. Like put a disco ball in a room, because it's very hard to do dramatic lighting changes. And the scenes you make are limited by what you have. We had an IKEA table, so we couldn't build bigger sets than that. And they couldn't be wilder than what was achievable within the framework of the laws of physics, which is total bullshit. The laws of physics should be optional, but
I think I see what you mean. If you suddenly need, I don't know, more ceiling, you don't have any more ceiling, and it's not like you can copy and paste another part of the wall to make it higher.
Yeah, and things hanging freely in the air. Of course, you can always achieve everything if you Photoshop it and post-process it, but then you're kind of veering away from the nice natural texture. The tactile nature, and I think the audience can see immediately when something has been jigged with a little bit, especially if you do it a lot. We try to avoid Photoshop as best we could, but it's also when I mentioned the laws of physics, it's also things like lens distortion towards the edge. If you have a camera moving in front of a heavily distorted image, and the character doesn't distort, then that looks a bit weird. So it can be things like that as well. But if you pre-plan and if you have a better technical framework than we did, then I'm sure it's an easy problem to fix. And another warning is that the last one, it tends to be a little gimmicky when they do stop motion in games, because it doesn't tie into the world, it doesn't tie into the storytelling. You need a reason why was this game made in stop motion animation. I think at least to yourself, you need to be ordered to answer that question. And if the answer is we didn't know how to do it any other way, then that's fine. That's fine.
That's good enough.
Yeah, that's fair enough. When we started out, I'd only heard of 3 games made with this technique. One was the Neverheard. I think that's the most famous one, made by Doug Tenable. And this is all clay. and the character is photographed separately, and then they have laid his little bitmap bare, so he slides above the background, which I think you can tell. But this was made in 1996, and it was totally revolutionary at the time. And
it has aged really good.
Yeah, and I should put that as a pro on my slide as well. That the visuals doesn't age really on stop motion animation. You can still enjoy these images just as much as you did back in the day. Sorry for the poor resolution on this. I couldn't find any better. And this was from 1995, and it's a game based on Edgar Allan Poe novels, and it's very dark. It's very creepy, and it utilizes stop motion. The creepy nature of stop motion animation really punches through here. It's a very dark story, and it has a cameo role by William S. Burroughs, which is amazing. Shortly before he died. And this is a Danish game called Blackout. I haven't played this, but I hear that it's very dark as well. As you can tell from the image, it's seedy, and it's got this nice expressionistic skew and slant to the environments. And some of the it's claustrophobic. Yeah, the building hangs on top of you. And this is a modern stop motion animation game, and technically it isn't stop motion animation, but they built a lot of the props, and then they used modern techniques to transfer the quality, the hand-built quality, into a computer game. So this is a fully 3D set utilizing built materials. So you get the textures and the gram. It's well done. It's made by a German company. And I think Germans are very well at the forefront of exploring a hybrid technique between old stop motion animation and the new technique of photogrammetry and whatever you can do in a modern game engine. This is another example of that. This game hasn't been released yet, but they built stop motion animation, did puppets, and they scanned the materials, and then they rebuilt the puppet in a 3D environment. So everything you see here is 3D, but they're utilizing scans of real world materials, which makes it look very, very real. And the benefit of this is that you can animate it in real time, and you can do advanced camera movements and things like that, which you can't, which is very, very hard to do in a traditional stop motion. You have to pre-plan a camera move if you want the camera move, which the guys who did this did. But the drawback of this is that all the characters are animated digitally on top of static stop motion backgrounds. But it's a beautiful game. It's a very unique look. This game hasn't been released either, but it's made out of paper. I don't know how much that is pretty visible. He's utilizing various grains of paper, and it also has this beautiful look. And he's also animated the characters on top of the backgrounds, but it blends really well. This game hasn't been released either, but it's also an example of a game made purely by paper. This is all copy paper, regular copy paper.
Wow!
It's it's made by a Swede. It's a very crazy process, but the results are out of this world. But when we started, we were very influenced by Polish movie posters because they have a strange. They create a strange cohesive world all onto their own. And when you look at a poster like this, you want to go up that ladder and see where it leads. And we use but it's also totally buildable. You could make this even if you used clay, as opposed to some surreal worlds, which would be very, very hard to build physically. And we're also interested in the dark, gritty nature by Polish painter Beksinski. He has a weird, dark sense of humor to a lot of his paintings, where the world is crumbling, but you see these balloons flying. And this is something that would be very hard to build physically because it's suspended in midair, unless you Photoshop it heavily. And we were also very inspired by Roman Polanski's apartment trilogy, especially the movie called Tenant, which is just it takes place in this apartment complex that when you watch the movie you can just feel that it smells funky and it's claustrophobic and you don't want to be there. The other one is Rosemary's Baby, of course, and the third one is Repulsion. But it has these the textures and the cinematography that is very heavy on shadow, very expressive as well.
It applies to your senses, right?
Yeah, it does. And at some point during animation school, I heard about this guy, John C. Lilly. He experimented a lot with. It wasn't the only thing he did, but he experimented a lot with. He was the father of the anti-sensory deprivation tank.
Oh, okay. A floating tank.
Floating tank, yes, where you're suspended in a saline solution that is that mimics the saline solution in your body. So you end up feeling like you're floating in air. And it's also at your body's temperature, so you don't really feel where your body ends and the water starts. But he did drugs when he was in these, and he had this wonderful notion that whenever he was on drugs, he thought he was visiting a parallel reality, separate from reality. And he had this. The one of the most wonderful ideas I've ever heard was that if he had a pad and paper next to him, next to the bed, or next to the floating tank, he would start to chart out what he had seen. So if he had hallucinated pyramids or statues or upside down cities, he would draw them, and then he would try to, for every trip, he would try to chart out using these little pads and drawings. He would chart out more and more of our subconscious, and he thought that was he was doing, and he gave his friends the task to do that as well, so they could together chart out as much as the human subconscious as possible together.
That's a useful trip.
Yeah, it's pretty fun. I don't know how far they got before they gave up. Obviously,
they got tired of the process. You think
they got tired of the process, or maybe they didn't get enough overlap on the pad pieces. But I thought that idea was so fun and surreal that I wanted to do something with it. So that had been in my mind when Eric got a request from a financing company, a grant company here in Sweden, where they asked him, do you have a project that we could give you some money for? Which is a very, very strange problem to have. Somebody who calls you up and wants to give you money.
Even then, there in Sweden is strange.
Yeah, it's super strange. That never happens. It's so the application process is very long, and it goes through a million bureaucrats before you get the thumbs up. So this was it's the same everywhere, I guess. But this time it was the reverse. They called us up and asked. So that was obviously an opportunity we couldn't let slip through our fingers. So he called me up and said, "Do you have something written that we could get this money for?" And I immediately thought of this John C. Lilly idea, where sharding out the human subconscious idea. And I wrote a little treatment on that, and he sent it in along with his little rough stop motion animated backgrounds, and that's how we got a little starting pot of money. So after that, it was we kicked it into fifth gear, and we pulled from all these various influences: Prisoner, Star Trek, Fringe, and Black Mirror. Various ideas to expand this core idea with, and we came up with a concept where a man and his wife has just moved into a new apartment together. That's where you're seeing all these moving boxes, and we thought that would be a great way of introducing the player characters to the world as well, because the player is equally unfamiliar with this apartment as the main character is. Which we thought was a clever way of avoiding having a main character that had woke up with amnesia and something like that, and walked around explaining things,
Sure.
which is a tired trope in computer games. So
Right.
the beginning of the game is just you getting acquainted with the house, and you have this romantic little breakfast directly on the floor because the furniture mover hasn't arrived yet.
Okay.
And gradually you get more and more introduced to your neighbors, and you start to find out more and more what they're up to. I won't spoil the plot here, but it gets creepy fast. And then we introduce the notion of exploring dreams, which is, and that's what we wanted to do. That's why we wanted to make a stop motion animated game in the first place, in order to build different people's dreams out of clay and cardboard, and see how trippy and wacky and surreal we could make it just using everyday household items like cotton, obviously here, and a lot of clay. And and when we built this environment, we really felt that we were onto something, because it didn't look like anything we'd seen, and it was achieved just using aluminum foil, cotton, and clay. And some of the images we had to Photoshop a little bit more, because the world in this dream is falling apart. It's taking place in an old woman's dream, and she has onset dementia.
Okay.
So it's that's why it looks like a faded photograph, and
a transition.
But that also allowed us to do some interesting things with puzzles, where you can move these pieces around and rearrange her memories in order to access various parts of her dream.
Okay.
And this is one of the reasons why stop motion animation doesn't have to be expensive. This is what you're seeing is moss, twigs, wood chips, and popsicle sticks, basically, and rocks. And it looks so delightful, and you just want to walk around there and touch everything and knock on that door and see what the bloody handprint is all about. So we try to use everyday objects as much as possible. And I remember for this dream especially, we used broccoli. We just went out to the store and bought broccoli in order to make small little trees. But obviously broccoli under warm film lights gets bad pretty fast. So it started to stink up the place. And that we ended up buying a crap ton of broccoli. Just because we had to throw the old stuff out after about half a day. It was gone. And this is also one of those where it wasn't physically possible to build anything at that scale, so we had to Photoshop this, and you can tell that it's lost a little bit of that tangible hand-built feeling. But in our case, there was no way around this, which is a bit of a shame. I guess we could have planned this better. But after a while, those the money Eric found started to run out, and that's when we decided to split the game up in discrete chapters. And then at that point we built the first 2 chapters, and we could release them so people could play the game. And we made as a motivating factor, it would be fun to hear people play the game and like it, and then it would spur us on while we were looking for more money. And we also started selling those 2 chapters. And on a very wild impulse, we also realized that we could probably sell the whole game to people up front. So they prepaid for all the chapters, but we haven't built those yet. We release them once we can. But looking back at it, that was a mixed blessing, because once we had done that, we were effectively taken hostage by the game. There was no way for us not to finish it by that point, because then we would owe people money, and we would get a horrible reputation if we just gave up on the game. We would have ended up being the two guys that took the money and ran for the rest of our lives. So that was never an option for us. But on the positive side, that was also a major contributing factor to why we ended up finishing the game. I think if we hadn't had this pre-bought deal, then I think we would have given up after chapter 3 or so.
It was also a motivator for you to finish the game, right? To see how much, how popular it was, and how much it was asking for you, from you.
Yeah. And chapter 3, I think, was very motivationally rough. Because that's when we started. That's when we had ran out of money, and we were trying to, make magic with a rusty nail and whatever
popsicle.
We could find, a popsicle. Yeah. So, but once we got chapter 3 done, then we got some more press attention, and more people bought the game, and that led to chapter 4, and chapter 4 led to chapter 5, and chapter 5 led to us finishing chapter 6. Nice. So in the end, it ended up working out for us, but it was so stressful knowing that you owed people a game, and especially when you have a bad day and you're really struggling, then that stress on top of not feeling great was not helpful. And I plan out the whole game on post-it notes. I like them because you can bring post-it notes with you in your pocket, and that way, when you have downtime waiting for the bus or wherever you do, you can just start working on the game and do a little puzzle or write a little dialogue. So my whole apartment was covered in post-it notes like this at one point, and I would just check them off and remove them when I was finished with them. It looked like a crazy person was living there, but.
And you were the one on stop motion. Remember that?
Yeah. I was asking for it at that point. But when we started out designing the game or designing the characters, both Eric and I are hugely fascinated by masks, both Greek antique masks and Venetian neutral masks. So we decided on a whim that wouldn't it be fun to create a world where everybody wears masks. Dogs and horses wear masks. I love that they make gas masks for horses and dogs during the First World War. But and we got more and more into that idea that we would never explain it to the player why everybody was wearing a mask. That would be that's the way that world works. But when we tried that out, and the first prototypes, this is what the main character looked like. He had this antique drama mask on him, and that's where we designed everybody to look like. But when we put that in the hands of the players, they immediately got stuck on why is he wearing a mask, and they couldn't get past that. But play the game. But they always kept asking us, but the mask thing. So we realized that it was hindering people more than it was creating this wacky, surreal world that we wanted to portray. So we decided to ditch it, and we decided to, instead of utilizing these Greek and Venetian neutral masks, we would make it more expressive and more a little bit more surreal. So we based the designs that ended up in the game on Dave McKean to the right and Carl Mieles, the Swedish sculptor, on the left. And this is what the main character ended up looking like. And we totally stole the shirt design from Harrison Ford in Blade Runner, because I just think that shirt is so beautiful.
Okay,
and
so it's a tribute.
It's a tribute to Blade Runner, yes. It's so striking.
Would you like it like that?
Yeah. But once we started to stop motion animate the puppets, we realized that we only have one go at it, and if the lighting of the stop motion puppet doesn't match the background, then we basically have to stop motion the walk cycle over again, and that's such a huge workload that we decided to make the character in 3D instead and export him as a sequence of still images, and that way we could massage the lighting settings so he looks like he can fit in any environment, and then add a little post-processing in the game engine on top of that. And that when we started out making the game, that was fairly hard, but now with the game engines you can download today, it's like Unity, they have treatments like this built into the game engine. They have setups for 2D lighting, and you can use secondary textures on top of your character texture to make him 3-dimensional and to make him catch light from the side or the rim like a normal map. So this is it's not easy or trivial, but there is support for this in any game engine now. There wasn't when we started working out. So this is how we made the characters. They're sculpey on top of a aluminium foil skeleton in order to save clay, because the Super Sculpey is a bit expensive. And then how they end up looking in the game is this. And then we could utilize 3D animation and make him smoke, and a little effect animation on the cigarette. And he doesn't stand out too much from the environment. Hopefully. Mm-hmm. This is the lineup for the characters. So they have this. They ended up with this very angular, expressive
Vitruvian man pose.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, the pose is for 3D animation. The classic T pose. So you can lift textures from underneath the arm and put them on, and they're rigged in a neutral pose. So animation gets easier.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But we started out making the game. This was the first environment we wanted to make, an island dream, and I did this little rough sketch on an island, and then Eric tried to match it with styrofoam, but it looked cool, but it's a little bit childish compared to we were going for a pretty dark story. We knew that from the beginning, so this looked a little bit too cute, happy. And he tried another one and darkened it down a little bit, and that still was a little bit too happy. And then he went with this one, which looks a little bit like somebody was sick on a piece of cardboard. But and it was also too flat. So then he put the styrofoam underneath the clay, and then he started to work with these more detailed, grainy, textured worlds instead. And we tried to make the background in Photoshop, but it was such a stylistic clash, and we didn't feel it worked. We went for a darker style, and still didn't feel it worked. This is a shot of how it looks in the engine once everything is in there, and this is the image of the final shot. Once everything was done, and obviously the clouds is digital, and the ocean is digitally animated, because we're not crazy enough to stop motion animate water. That's very hard to do, at least for us. And all of the environments usually start out with a very crude sketch by me, done very fast, and then we try to block out where the main furniture was, and Eric made just cut the shapes of the walls out of whatever he had lying on hand. And this one is funny, because the door to the right is there because he reused this piece of cardboard from another room, and then he just blocked up the wall, and then he sent a shot to me that I didn't really like. It was a little bit too skewed, too wacky, the angles. So he muted the colors and got rid of the kind of wacky angles, and we ended up with something like this. And that hole in the wall was still visible because he just painted over the cardboard he put in there. And I got so obsessed with that. It looks like a secret wall, right? It looks, as a player, you want to go in there and examine that, and you want to find out what's behind there. So I rewrote the story in order for the story to have a secret wall and a room behind that. And that was just one of those happy accidents, because he reused the piece of cardboard from another room. So sometimes you have to pre-plan a lot, but you can also be playful, even if you're doing stop motion, and take advantage of these little happy accidents that happen all the time. And another thing that...
Yep. We have 10 minutes to go, and then we go to question and answers.
Okay. I'll do it as fast as possible. And this is also important to me, but maybe nobody else. But if you do environments, please put light switches and power outlets in there, because
that's logical.
That's logical, and a lot of people forget it because it's not dramatic. It's not important to the story. But if you don't put it in there, subconsciously the player or the viewer will notice it and feel that the room feels off a little bit. Okay. And it's the same with the radiator. But we have radiators under every window in Sweden because it's very cold up here. But that's just the local. That's just if you're living in a cold environment. And also a very good way to make your world seem larger than it actually is to put these in little pipes and things in the corner, because piping implies that there's a water system and sewage in the building, but and it makes the world seem functional and larger than it actually is.
Yeah.
Which is if you're on a limited budget, that's absolutely what you want to utilize. This is Eric building one of the sets. I mostly put this in there because it's fun to watch Eric when he works. And this is his workspace. And as you can, if you're familiar with stop motion animation, this probably looks like your workplace. And the most important things is the coffee cup, this strong coffee, and the little under the knife. There's a blue pad, look like a hockey puck, and that's Swedish snus, which is a nicotine-based stimulant. Eric used both of those. It's legal. It's not you don't get tricky from it. It's like chewing tobacco, but it's ground up. So you put it under your lip, and then it excretes nicotine throughout the day. It gives you a slight buzz.
So it's like a double shot of coffee.
It's like a double shot of coffee. So strong coffee and snooze, and then you're in work mode, and you can just power through the day.
Okay. Okay.
And I like these shots are so cool because you can very see it for what it is. It's just twigs that Eric found in his backyard and rocks and moss. But when you arrange them and light them and do a little magic to them, then they become these beautiful things, little worlds that you want to run around in. And at one point we thought, since it's a very trippy game, we thought, let's use UV lights and put a lot of mushrooms in there. So, but it's hard to work with UV lights. After about 10 minutes, you start to get a headache. So you have to go back and forth between regular light and UV light, and that's
plus
very
the coffee.
Yeah, that's straining on your eyes.
That's dangerous.
Yeah, and if you're interested in making something like that. Something like this, but you want to use 3D technologies, these great tools that you can make at home. This is a homemade scan box or a material scanner. Just Google that and you'll find drawings for all this. And this is a 3D printed photogrammetry scanner. It's basically like a little DJ table, and you put what you want to scan on top of it, and then you rotate the hand crank, and the phone takes a picture every 15 degrees or so. So you end up with a perfect photogrammetry.
Nice.
And that's free. You can download that from the internet today, which is cool. And we ended up finishing the game, and we submitted it to some competitions, and we got some awards for it, which was really motivating. And it was also the artwork from it was exhibited in a few places, which was also a huge motivating factor and a validation to 8 years of our lives spent on this project.
8 years.
And 8 years, yeah, and that's it. That's my presentation, and here's my
contact
information. If you have any questions, please send them to me, and I will try to answer.
Okay, let's start then. When I think you answered this already. Felipe is asking, why did you choose the stop motion for your game? You explained it, but if you wanna, like in a nutshell.
It's because Eric has stop motion background. He that's what he knows. That's what he's an expert at, and he already have a lot of the tools and the materials to do it. So if we wanted to make a game together, then that was our only option.
Yeah, you have to make like a middle ground, right?
Middle ground.
Yeah. Now, Alejandro is asking, how much time did it take you to define each environment, and how much did it change from the original design to the ones in the final game?
That's one of the reasons why stop motion games are hard. You have to pre-plan everything, and you can't change it a whole lot once you built it. Once you built it, if you want to make a huge change, you basically have to build it from scratch again and repaint it and relight it and reshoot it. So we tried to establish everything as early as possible, and giving it a little leeway wherever we could. You can always do magic with Photoshop, but you lose a little bit of the stop motion quality when you do that.
When so you can get the deadline on time for the first chapter because of the money.
Yeah.
How much time did it take you to get to the final sets, time-wise?
Final sets for the entire game, or for the...
No, just for the first chapter, for example.
We built the two first chapters simultaneously.
Okay.
So they were done at the same time, basically, because we knew the entire story. We knew everything in the story for the first two chapters, and then that was very quick. It was 3 months. 3 months.
3 months.
But we had help at that point. Another guy called Mikael, he helped us out. So that's where you can. Hopefully you can't tell, but I can certainly tell what was built by Mikael and what was built by Eric. But hopefully nobody else can tell.
Okay. Now, Hector is cursing the door. He's saying it caused him stress because he couldn't open it in a whole chapter. The secret door.
Oh yes.
Yeah, it was stressful.
Yeah, that's pretty mean. That's my fault. As the game designer, I tease you with a secret door, and it actually isn't until one chapter later that you can open it. That is mean.
Okay, and there's not a hint that you should wait for it or anything.
No, the game
just keep them suffering.
I think if you try hard enough, the main character will say something like, "Maybe I should leave this alone for now." If you try to open it 10 times in a row or something like that, then I pop a hint. It's still pretty mean, though.
Yeah, I see what you mean. Now, after finishing the two first chapters, how long did it take for you to get the financing? To get going for the game? For the third one, that was about 6 months. But we at that point we started selling the first two chapters, as well as you could buy the whole game as well at that point. So money was trickling in. But it took about 6 months before we could actually launch production on the third. So there was. Sorry.
So there was usually about a 1 year pause between chapters, which isn't great since the game has a linear story and you have to wait a year in between acts. Then you forget the story and everything. So that's it's not a great way to roll out the linear story, but that's the only option we had.
Okay. Did you have any feedback from your game users about waiting for the next chapter and the next chapter? Is it common to wait if a game is released in chapters?
Yeah, it is common, unfortunately. And for a lot of episodic games, they usually just end up releasing the first two chapters, and then they run out of money, just like we did, and they can't complete the game, which is super sad. But that's the way the world is sometimes.
Okay. After this experience, sorry.
We did receive a lot of feedback. Once we released the first two chapters, a lot of players got back to us with feedback. And we could also see what people were trying to do in the game. So if they were trying to use the key with a toilet paper roll, then we could write the reply for that after the fact. Okay. So the game got more and more responsive the more people played it, which was great.
Okay. Did you make... after the release of the two first chapters, was that enough publicity for you, for people to buy the game? Or?
We got a lot of publicity since we made it in such a difficult and exclusive style as stop motion is. It's not unique. People have done these type of games before, but you get a lot of.
It's not common.
It's not common at all, and since you're competing with these very 3D type of games, this looks very weird, and a lot of journalists will gravitate towards it just on the looks alone.
Okay. So after this experience, what would you recommend to a game designer who would choose to make a game in stop motion after you have learned? What?
It depends on your level of technical expertise, I would say. If you are a traditional stop motion animator, then doing it in a fashion that we did it it's not a bad choice. But I would probably do it more like the Germans do today, where they build things by hand and then scan them and rebuild them in the computer, so they end up with clean meshes for the characters that they can actually animate, and they can change the lighting of the set in real time, and they can change the position of the camera in real time, which are both options we never had. But if you're technically proficient, then I would go with that.
Okay, that's good. Somebody's praising your set looks.
Thank you.
Really, really, really good. Really good.
Yeah, it's all Eric. He's the genius behind the sets.
Another comment from Felipe. He didn't expect the scanner, the 3D scanner.
Yeah, that's a recent find by me as well. It's even cooler than it looks, because if you plug the microphone from the camera into one of these a microphone that you can take images with, then it automatically takes the camera automatically takes an image with each 15-degree intervals. Otherwise, you have to do it manually. Hit the photo button. So it's pretty trippy. It's a lot of plastic. I think it's about $30 worth of plastic, but $30 is cheap for a 3D scanner.
Yeah.
They're usually hundreds of dollars.
I have a question. After releasing the 2 first chapters, I mean, I think I understand you have the idea, like the complete idea, like the treatment of the complete idea down, and you developed the 2 first chapters. But then after the 2 first chapters, how long did it take you to enrich the other story for the chapters? Did you move away from the, I don't know, a first draft of an idea of a new world in a different chapter, chapters?
Yeah, we had the basic story beats down, and we stuck to them pretty throughout the process. We stuck to them, but we also had these white fields on the map where we didn't know exactly what would happen. So we knew where we were going, but we could still deviate a little bit and invent as we moved along. But the structure of the game mirrors the structure of a Zelda title.
Okay.
Where you have this hub world, like Hyrule Field with a castle town and all that, and then you locate the temple and break into the temple and fight the boss, and then you go back to the hub world, and you repeat that concept over and over and over again. And that's basically the structure of our game as well. We have the hub world, which is the apartment complex, and then the temples, in our case, are the neighbors' apartments that you have to break into or manipulate your way into. And then the temple is the dreams, where you have to find out what's going on, what are the rules of the dream, and then you have to locate something. I will be vague about that, but it's an equivalent to a boss in each dream, and then you go back to the hub world again. So that's the structure of the game, and that really helped. Knowing that really helped.
We're getting close to ending the session. Just one more question. Did you have any, you or your partner, did you have any idea on a dream world that you thought it would best? I'm sorry. You thought it would be good looking, but thought about it some more and then just discarded it?
Ooh.
Because I don't know if it was too wacky or too edgy or too expensive maybe.
I wanted to do a ballroom dream where people made from glass or porcelain are dancing in the middle of the room, and you have to walk around and manipulate them to move out of your way. And if you don't, then a hand would break and shatter. That was a nice concept, but it wasn't feasible to build because how do you build that?
Yeah, I can see that. Okay, then I think we have the last question from Alejandro. How much has changed? How much has your creative process changed through each chapter of work and designing?
I think I got a little bit better at pre-planning throughout the game. It started out with me being very panicky, writing all day, trying to lay down the tracks in front of the moving train. But the longer we got into it, the more I knew what I needed to pre-plan and what could be invented on the spot. So I got more confident in the process. And I already knew a lot of Eric's strengths as a designer and as a builder, but I got to know him a lot more throughout the process, his aesthetics and quirks.
Okay. Do you think you get less panicky just because this was a stop motion game, or just I mean your way of working is you panicking at the beginning or something?
Yeah, it was especially panicking because we sold the whole game and we didn't have money to complete it. So the third chapter was emotionally the worst for both of us. But then once we released the third chapter, then we were in the middle of the ocean. The third chapter was the middle of the ocean, where it's equally long to go back to where you came from as it is to push forward. That was the feeling. And then when we released the third one, it got better. And the fourth one, it got even better because then there's only 2 more to do. And then there was only 1 more to do. So it was gradually better and better. The 6th chapter was very hard as well, mostly because of UV light problems. And we wanted it to look unbuildable. And that's very hard to achieve.
I see. Well, you did it.
Hopefully.
That's the good news. You did it.
We got through that. Yeah, we did. It's hard. Yeah. I don't know if I recommend it. Make a small game. Don't make a 6-chapter, huge 15 to 20-hour game. Make a small game. Then you can do it. That's my advice to myself.
Yeah, that's a good advice to everyone.
Yeah.
Also, thank you. Well, thank you everyone who got into this talk. And if you want to see any more material of Anders Gustafsson, there you have the social media links for him. We'd like to thank Anders Gustafsson for being here with us and sharing his work.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Stay in touch, keeping with the festival walls, so you can see what else is in there. Gracias por estar con nosotros. Chequen el resto de la programación y nos estamos viendo dentro de poco. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Thank you.